So I had been thinking about doing a refactoring on one of the sites that I now own. If you guys remember, I had made a video about this a couple weeks ago that was about a project that was given to me from a client of mine, where essentially they wanted to build out an AI product store where essentially you can make AI images and then apply them to products and then buy those products for yourself or for whoever. And it's one of those projects that I do look back on and realize that there is so much that could have been done differently and a lot better. In fact, I knew that from the beginning, but if you guys had saw the previous video, this was more about fulfilling like client obligations as far as what they wanted. So if you remember, I was basically forced to basically just use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on the front end, which really limited me to what I could do and how fast the actual project was gonna go. I also remember that it took a bit to kind of deal with resizing issues because Printful's API had like a 50 megabit size limit on images, so I had to deal with that. There was just a lot of things as far as balancing that was a little bit difficult, but I feel like every project has its own quirks, right? Like you're never gonna just go into a project and everything be perfect right off the bat. You're always gonna find something that is not up to optimization, could have been done better, could have been refactored in a different way. There's always a million different solutions to the same problem. However, now it's been some time. Now that I own the whole thing, I figured that I should take some time to be able to try to refactor this. My time is extremely limited with everything I'm doing, but I don't feel that that's an excuse. I could try to do some things, and so for the past couple weeks, I've just been thinking in my head, kind of trying to understand what was necessary to kind of move or refactor any sort of things that I wanted to do. The first thing that I was thinking about when it came down to this full refactor is that I don't really need to change much, at least for right now. Flask is a really good backend. I don't really have any issues with it. It's not supposed to be this huge, robust thing that can handle everything. It's more of a Swiss Army knife, you know? You can add things to what you need, and it could be very simplistic, or it could be very robust. But the front end definitely was going to change. I mean, in reality, the code that is just involved with this is ridiculous. We have the products.js, which essentially is most of the information. It has a lot of stuff. It's about over 2,000 lines, I think, even over 3,000 lines of just a lot of pure JavaScript, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. We have the generator.js, which is used for getting a new AI image. We have the editor.js, which is used to basically edit out your generated image on a product. So therefore, when you're satisfied with everything, you could then be able to send that request over, see what it looks like, and then approve it for your shopping cart. We have the shopping cart.js as well. And we also have transactional history. And so dealing with that JavaScript side is going to be some of the most daunting tasks of everything. And so it's about trying to figure out what things are important, what things aren't, because even though it seems daunting with the amount of lines of code that we're dealing with, it's not that much if you really look at it. 3,000 lines from the product stuff looks crazy, but when you realize that they're just a bunch of button clicks and actions, most of those things will probably be inside of the components themselves. I started to think to myself, I'm probably going to want a component framework, something like React, Vue, or Svelte. I'll probably not want to use Bootstrap anymore. I'm probably going to want to use Tailwind, and it's kind of just easier to kind of work with TypeScript more than JavaScript at this point. And the last thing I think I'm going to probably include in the front end is something called Shodson. Shodson is a component library, and other than those things, I feel like keeping everything else the same for now is good. There are things that I want to change on the back end, especially when it comes to the external AI services, some cleanup on the actual CI/CD, maybe throw in IAC depending on the situation, but unplugging this part is going to be a bit. So I decided I was going to update the diagram here. As you can see, this is my idea for V2. It's going to take a bit of time. We'll see how it works. You know, Vue 3, Tailwind, TypeScript. Lucide I wanted to add, which is just like an icon library in particular. So it's like what I would assume like Font Awesome but like a library that you could just add. So that is there, and then shots in. Let's kind of get started on just building out the basics of what I would need. So currently this is what I have right now. Some stuff is just me working on some stuff and testing, which I'll get into in a bit. But if we start here from the app.view section, I figured that the first thing that I'm gonna need to do is make components, obviously, right? So like, it was difficult for me because I'm trying to figure out what components from the site I had before essentially would be the ones that I would need now. And when I looked at that, I started to realize, well, I'm gonna need the header at the top. I'm gonna need the gallery for the images. I'm gonna need the product section. I'm gonna need to generate AI images, so there's gonna need to be a section for that. And then I'm going to need also like the product showcase place, right? Like the place where after you generated your image or selected an image and selected a product, that now you can add the two together and actually work on making sure the product is what you want. And then of course, the shopping cart and the transactional history and the welcome page. So those are the components that I was thinking about. So I decided to make those files and add them into the actual app view. You work from your app view, at least from a single page app concept. If you're not making any routes or anything, you would start from your app view, and then from there you would add components in and basically work all from within that template, and basically can be able to build out your logic from there. The idea or the concept is that I want to make it so that that page is essentially the first thing that you see on the site, right? Like if you first go to the site, it's going to first have it at a state where the is welcome is going to be set to true. And so because of this, I'm going to need some sort of variable that handles this. There is a reactive file that I made called mainstore.ts. It's in the library folder inside of stores. And essentially, I just made some deeply nested reactive object where I can make in a bunch of variables like is true, is false, and be able to set them if necessary or change them if necessary, right? And what's cool about it is that it's like one central location and it can be reactive within all your components, because now I can just import this and then be able to use that, right? So I took this app state and I imported it in, and then from there I started using it for logic. Like if is welcome is not set to true, then we see everything like the header, generate AI, the products, blah, blah, blah. If it is set to true, then we see the welcome. And that's how you can kind of handle out the button when it says get started. So if I go into the welcome here and I go to get started here, you could see that I have app states is welcome and I set it to false. And that's how I can be able to get to this component section over here. So that's great. But the last thing that I was doing is now connecting in the login part of it. I'm basically stuck at where I have to deal with the cookie. So I'll probably give a full update on that, but just to kind of show a little bit of it. If I go into the back end of the project and then I go down to routes and then I go to auth, right? I was essentially messing with this, where this was originally my callback code that I use with logging into Google. And after I log in and Google accepts everything, then it should shoot me back out in particular. Before, it was this one line here that would redirect me to the actual last rendered template of AI generator, which then came with its own static JavaScript X, Y, and Z, right? But now my goal is to then try to set the cookie with is logged in. And I'm having some difficulties with cores in particular, and the cookie and X, Y, and Z. So once I get that done, pretty much, then I think that I'll really be able to roll, because then I can be able to start to move in the images from AWS. And then I can really start to focus on building out the hardest part of the things, which is the actual product designer. The sooner and the faster I can get to the product designer, the better it will be, because that's going to take time in itself, and that's probably going to be a whole video in itself. But that's all I wanted to talk about in this video today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you liked the video. Please leave a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you like this type of content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave it in the chat below, as I always love to interact with you guys. And other than that, I hope the rest of your day goes well. Peace, everyone.